Let's move over to Newcastle. PIF are reportedly set to scale back its international investment. What impact could that have on Newcastle? Does that mean more funds coming into Newcastle?
Well, look, scaling back international investment, if you look at the actual story behind it, and I spoke to my contact in PIF this week about this, what it really means is where 30% of their investment was going to be invested overseas, it may come down to about 18 or 20. But also the assets that they have already invested in, such as Newcastle, are not really going to be part of any of those cuts. So it will not impact Newcastle at all. The big project for Newcastle right now that everybody's looking at, of course, is the stadium redevelopment. That could be over £1 billion project. And if PIF bankroll that, which I still believe that they may well do to some great degree, along with some financing found by the Reuben brothers, I think there could be a combination there. Then I think that would be a massive help for the northeast of England and a big investment. So I don't see anything but still reasonable news for Newcastle. Their biggest battle right now is PSR, and they've got to get through that and find the ways forward and get Newcastle back onto that sort of form that brought them Champions League.
You talk about that £1 billion investment that may need to go into kind of enhance St. James's Park. What are we getting from that £1 billion investment? And could that maybe be better spent moving the stadium somewhere else to update it and make it more modern?
Well, this is the challenge: is do you get a stadium elsewhere for less money, or do you look at a whole multi-use facility that is more than just the stadium but gives a whole heartbeat to the city? If they can do it, I think that the redevelopment of St James's Park into a multi-use facility that would give a whole new life to that city centre for the next 50, 100 years would be well worth an investment. Would be so well received in the northeast. The Saudi owners and the PIF would be really applauded for doing something like that, and we'd have a tangible benefit from getting a nation state involved in a football club that would be very hard to argue against. So I'm hoping they go for the whole thing and really do a major redevelopment project that will change the face of Newcastle for many years to come.
And where are we getting that capacity to? We talked about it with Everton. Obviously, capacities are a huge deal if you want to host, matches at a major tournament or a Champions League or Europa League final in the future. Where are we now at St. James's Park in capacity, and what are we trying to get to?
I think you've got to look at about between 70 to 80 is where you've got to try and aim for. And certainly at Newcastle, they could fill that every week, going up from the present, just over 50 at St. James's Park. So that's where they need to be. And just, taking that back to the Everton question right at the start, certainly Everton are getting to 53,000 probably means that they're still in the top 10 of the Premier League. But soon you won't be in the top 10 of the Premier League unless you've got over 70,000. So it's becoming a pretty magic number to get to. And aspirationally, that's where some things have got to be looked at in that aspect as to how you remain competitive. I think there are enough bells and whistles around Everton to maintain that competitiveness, because it's getting more and more expensive for other clubs to put in new stadiums. And as I say, at Newcastle, we're going to need a nation state to actually look at these sort of developments. They're that big a scale. So, look, it's a problem. I've been involved in a number of stadium projects at the clubs I've been in. It's suddenly how cost increases and just doubles, triples very, very quickly. You have national crisis like you have Ukraine, then you have the lockdown. All these complicated issues get involved in planning and can lead to a major cost increase. So life just gets in the way of making simple plans for new stadiums. So it's a very, very hard thing to embark on. Probably Arsenal and the Emirates is probably the last one that was really the most successful, and they got away with it in low interest era. I think Spurs as well had the problems with the pandemic and all those sort of issues. So it's not an easy project to embark on. So any clubs that want to try it, good luck.
And, I think it's become a big thing in the United States with these new stadiums where they become so big that they almost become soulless and the fans kind of lose an identity and a connection with the team. Obviously, in the UK, the connection with the fans is the most important part for a lot of these clubs. Should clubs be worried about losing some of that by expanding just such massive numbers, or the revenue and the opportunity for more fans to go will actually have the opposite effect?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if we look at West Ham moving into the Olympic Stadium, the biggest criticism has been about the fact that stadium was never built for football. But when you look at Spurs, they have managed to design in a lot of the need for football fans being close to the pitch, etc. Everton, they have certainly designed in to make it feel like a gladiatorial arena. It's got the steepest pitch of any of the seats, I think, of any football stadium. So as long as it's got design for football fans and they understand things like acoustics, they understand the need to create some sort of atmosphere, then it'll depend on the architect. But things like the Olympic Stadium are always cautionary tales that would cost a lot of money now to fix. Can be done, but still, you've got to be careful because, as you say in the US, I mean, well, the Olympic Stadium can fit baseball, and I'm afraid baseball is not a great shape for football. And having athletics tracks is not a great shape for football. So we've just got to be clear on those things and try and make them football specific if we can do.
It's interesting, right? Because a lot of the MLS clubs are actually going the opposite way, where they're taking them out of these big stadiums and trying to put them into these more intimate stadiums so that there's more atmosphere and fans actually can enjoy it. Because as you say, for me, NYCFC play at Yankee Stadium, not a great atmosphere and 55,000 seats when there's only 22,000 fans. So it's interesting to see those two things kind of go the opposite way and different ways of growing the game.
No, absolutely. And, this is where you've got to respect the fans. And you're right. Maybe multi-use stadiums seem obvious on a spreadsheet, but in terms of the experience, it's no good for the fans. And the fans are the key people at the end of the day. So there's got to be ways that the fans are going to be looked after. And as you say, if it means going to separate facilities, then that's maybe what has to happen. And they try and build in uniqueness for those fans and create an atmosphere, which is what sports and live sports in particular is all about. Obviously, you got to look at the economics and try and make it as multi-use as possible, but maybe not multi-sport use. You've got to find other more innovative, clever ways to do this now.
Let's head back to Newcastle. Dan Ashworth has held up analyst Luke Dixon's move to Newcastle by putting him on gardening leave. Is this a common move?
It can be common. It's normally done for in part the negotiation that this is what I could do. But this one to me really does smack of a tit for tat in terms of the Man United Newcastle situation over Ashworth himself. I think they're trying to make a point, and that obviously there was a bad taste left in everybody's mouth between both those clubs when it happened earlier in the summer. So yes, I think this is a bit of a tit for tat. But it would be normal to have a release clause, and then if somebody doesn't want to pay some form of remuneration for that, then you can go into gardening leave. But I've been in many cases where I did not want to stop somebody's career, and I've let them go. But I think this is because there is bad blood here that gardening leaves even got a public mention.
And then at Newcastle, it's been reported that PIF is set to scale back their international investment. What impact could that have on Newcastle and them moving forward with their plans to obviously get to the levels of Man City and those kind of clubs?
Yeah, I suspect it won't have any impact at all. I mean, at the end of the day, the numbers that you're talking about with Premier League football are minuscule compared to the investments that have been made by PIF. So I just, Newcastle's limitations anyway, as we know, are largely driven by the financial regulation that's in the sport. And that's not just the Premier League, PSR stuff and the new regime that's coming in, but also UEFA. So I don't think it'll have any impact at all. I think they've got bigger issues, Newcastle, with regulation. And 100 million here or there that we're talking about from PIF to maybe fund the sponsorship of the training ground or, some other infrastructure around the stadium is just, in the grand scheme of Saudi money, is neither here nor there. And in any event, I still suspect that it needs to make financial sense for them to make it in the first place, regardless of whatever internal investment rules that they have. So I would say overall, no impact.